Welcome to the Support is Sexy podcast. I'm your host, Elaine Fluker, executive coach for high-performing women. Join me for inspiring conversations with over 500 women leaders around the world as they share how they excelled in their careers or launched successful businesses and the important role that support played along the way. Because as we always say, having it all does not mean doing it all alone. Here we go. Hi there, it's Elaine Fluker. Thank you so much for joining me for another episode of the Support is Sexy podcast. You know, it just wouldn't be the same without you. Today, I'm sitting down with Jean Ibañez Payne, founder and CEO of TI Verbatim Consulting, a people-first culture firm on a mission to make sure going to work does not suck. Jean spent 15 years in corporate before building a company that helps leaders model healthy culture, align strategy with what employees actually feel, and fix what's broken without blaming HR. We talk about what real culture change looks like at the top, why you can't outsource everything to HR, and how her company blends AI plus humans to read the room, turning feelings and feedback into decisions that stick. We also go there on DEI, tokenism versus true equity, and an unforgettable elevator analogy that reframes equality versus equity in plain language. And Jean shares her personal story as a military sexual trauma survivor, how shame kept her silent for decades, the rock bottom moment when she chose to live, and what it means to reclaim your worth every single day. I'm so grateful to her for opening up in this way. I know it's going to touch many of you. So, a gentle heads up, this episode includes discussion of sexual assault and mental health. Resources for support are in the show notes, so be sure to take care of yourself. If you're a leader, founder, or people-first manager who wants a brave, humane workplace and a human who's healing while you lead, this conversation is for you. All right, take a deep breath, offer yourself some compassion, and let's get into it. Here's my conversation with Jean Ibañez Payne. So, Jean, thank you so much for joining us for an episode of Support is Sexy. I'm excited to chat with you today.
Thank you. Thank you. I am so excited to be here today. So thank you for the opportunity.
Absolutely. So let's start off. Tell us a little bit about TI Verbatim Consulting, where you are the founder and CEO. What is the organization about?
So the organization is, the mission of our company is to help people work better together. And part of my language, the reason why I started TIVC is because going to work should not suck.
I love that.
So it's all about the culture and ensuring that when people come to work, they feel valued and respected.
What was your experience where you felt like, where you came to that awareness of, it seems obvious, right? Going to work should not suck, but where you got to a point where you had these experiences where you thought, I'm going to start a company that's going to help organizations do HR better, so to speak.
So I spent 15 years in the corporate environment. And one of the reasons why I decided to leave the corporate world is because I felt that I had lost the self identity. I didn't feel like I fit in. And I also didn't feel that I was in a healthy culture. So my big goal was to leave the corporate world, to start a company where people feel content. They want to come into work. They truly enjoy it. But most important, they feel valued and respected, and they can be themselves when they come to work.
How do you, or how does your company help organizations do that differently? Because, I won't say all companies get it wrong and not all HR departments, so to speak, are bad. But sometimes you tell someone, go speak to HR. Have you spoken to HR? As an executive coach, if there's issues, I always ask about the conversations with HR. Some employees are afraid of to go to HR. They think it's going to be, some punitive reaction somehow. Sometimes they don't trust the HR department, or sometimes they just don't know the resources that are available. So how can anyone listening, say that has a small business, especially on both sides, or if you're an employee, but certainly if you have a business and you're setting up your HR department, what are the things that they need to keep in mind to do it better?
So culture starts at the very top. Culture starts with leaders. Leaders have to model the behavior that they want the employees to model. And so I always say that we can't expect HR to solve all the problems. And that is an excuse for people to say, well, it's HR's responsibility. No, the responsibility starts from the very top. So for us is ensuring that people feel valued and respected, and knowing when there's issues with the culture and how to recognize it and be okay with it. So for us, often we're brought in when there's something broken, right? When there's EO complaints and there's culture issues, there's attrition, there is lack of potentially diversity in the workplace because they don't feel sense of belonging. So it's really all about the message starts with the CEO, and then we engage HR to try to understand the problem.
Do you primarily work with organizations in the United States or globally?
So right now we are primarily working with organizations in the U.S., but we're looking to branch out. So what makes us really special is we have created actually our own platform, our own AI, artificial intelligence, backed by data scientists and research based. So our approach is very unique. When we come into organizations, the biggest goal is that how does how does leadership's goals, strategic goals, how does it align to the organization? And how does it align to the priority of the employees? And we look at their feelings, emotions, opinions, and we try to align that with people, process, and procedures. So our approach is very different. We come in to organizations not just to do surveys and just random interviews, but really try to dive into the culture to really understand what is driving the culture and how does that align to the objectives of leadership.
And it sounds like it's not just anecdotal or people giving their, opinions or feedback. As you said, on a survey, you incorporated AI. So is that something that you have done in the past couple of years as AI has become more popular and people are learning how to use it for, data research and that kind of thing?
Yes, especially really understanding the emotions, the feelings, and the opinions of employees, and how does that align to the policies and procedures? Because I always say, if somebody comes into work and they want to have donuts on Monday, right, and you don't provide them, if there's just one person who is upset about that, then it's not a cultural problem. But if you start analyzing the people, process, and procedures, and you have a lot of people saying, you know what, we should get donuts on Monday, then it becomes a bigger issue, right? So it's really trying to analyze what is the really root cause of the issue and how does that align to the people, process, and procedures.
Do you find that utilizing AI makes it easier for your company to be able to get a read on what's really going on in an organization, or does it make it easier for people to maybe respond more honestly, or is it easier for the AI to pick up on the things that people are not saying, or is it sort of a combination? What ways does it support, do you feel like?
So one of the things with the culture platform that we have is that we don't take the human aspect out of it. We have data scientists, we have research-based subject matter experts. So as we're conducting the interviews, the qualitative and the quantitative analysis, there's interaction with people. And where the natural language and the AI comes is that while we collect all that data, it's ingested into the platform. And then the platform actually will process the information. And then we print it out. And basically what we do is we have a findings report, right? We have a findings report and we're able to analyze that and then really make some informed decisions. So it's not just, just an AI tool where we're like, oh, hey, let's just let them do everything. There's a human aspect that we incorporate into that.
So I'm very intrigued by what you were saying about not taking the human component out of the analysis that you do using AI. I have clients, executive coaching clients, one actually who was in HR. She's a recruiter, a talent acquisition individual, and her organization just went through this big upheaval, as a lot of them have, where they've gone, what is it, AI, quote unquote, AI first. But now, well, they did maybe a month or so ago, and now they're sort of reverting back. Like, oh, yeah, we took the humans out of this. We still need them in the process. And I know we're all still learning, but I'm just glad to hear you mention about the way you are approaching it with we're not taking humans out of this. Humans are still very much a part of the process. AI is supporting in the analysis as opposed to taking over.
Exactly. Yes, yes. And that's what we have our own, subject matter experts internally that we don't use consultants. We have our own W-2 employees who are in-house because we want them to really understand. One is that be able to conduct the analysis in a human way. But also what we're doing too is, as part of using the technology, we're building an index. So when we're hired by organizations, we can use a benchmark of what are other industries saying. How does that align to what your organization is facing today?
Hmm. So you mentioned earlier that primarily, at least right now, the organizations you tend to work with are US based. And I know there's been a lot of changes in the US as far as the workforce, right? Hundreds of thousands of people, unfortunately, have been laid off or furloughed or all these different things. What do you think about the sort of way, I should say it this way, is there a way for companies to handle something as difficult as a layoff in a way that is less painful for employees who are experiencing it? And I ask that because we rarely hear that side of it. How can a company do this better other than our natural outrage of why are they laying people off and that kind of thing? But just with the climate that we're in right now as we're recording this, any thoughts on that?
That's a really good question. I go back to the human aspect. All of us are having to make some really hard decisions. If you have been watching the news, you know exactly what I'm talking about. And so part of making those hard decisions is really being transparent and really, having humility in how you handle the situations. Because it's not just when somebody is laid off or somebody's furloughed, it's not just that person. Their family is impacted. You have children, you have partners. And so for us has been very much having that human aspect into, well, you do a layoff, or do you do a furlough? How much notice can you give them? Can you give them 4 weeks? Can you give them 8 weeks? Can you give them 16 weeks and allow them the space to be able to use some of that time to, possibly finding another employment? And I think that really helps with the culture. It helps with the reputation, and it makes them feel that they're not just a number. It doesn't change the fact that it's a hard decision, but I think when you treat people like human beings, they appreciate the good faith efforts that you have made.
Yes, thank you for that answer. And I think too, one of the things, or at least I've witnessed, and I've been through this years ago when I used to work in corporate, if a company can extend the things that you mentioned, or even the human aspect, usually when you're getting laid off and that's the first thing you're thinking about, of course, family, friends, how am I going to do this? Yes, money, but it's so many other things to that. Finding another job, but then also insurance for a lot of people. So I know clients who, on both sides, organizations sometimes extend longer period for you to have insurance, even if you stop working for a certain. So there are a lot of, I'm mentioning this for people listening, there are a lot of different ways, especially if you have a company, big or small HR, that you can consider the human considerations that a person might have in that situation. Of course, there are going to be things that you can't do, but there might be some other things that you can do. What do you think about the diversity climate that we're in now too? Earlier you were speaking about it, or we mentioned belonging, and I know that's something organizations language-wise have shifted to. But is there any way, I should say, are you advising organizations differently within this climate, especially those that do still care about or have policies and things that they want to keep in the forefront related to diversity?
That's a really good question. I'm a certified diversity executive. I went through a very a difficult certification process to achieve that. And there are a couple of things I always talk about is when it comes to diversity, equity, and inclusion. I am a diverse professional from Colombia, South America. I never understood what being different was until I moved to the U.S. When people would make it a point to say, "Well, you're different. You sound different." And when you speak, English, actually, you'll be the greatest employee. I actually had somebody put that on my performance review. And so, but I also recognize for me as a diverse professional is that I want to, when I was in the corporate world, I want to be selected because I am a talented professional, right? There were some times where I was perceived as a token, like tokenism, right? I actually had somebody pull me to the side when I applied for a job, and they're like, "Hey, listen, if you get selected for that job, you're not qualified, is you're going to be perceived as a token, right? So my biggest message to everyone who's doing the diversity, equity, and inclusion is really being intentional with the program, is reflecting the communities that we serve, but also being cautious with establishing quotas and goals, because that's called affirmative action. And often the companies will make goals for diversity, but at the same time, it's like, okay, well, it's a very fine line in how you address that. But I also talk about equality and equity. Everybody wants a level playing field when it
Yes.
comes to with being promoted, and people are like, well, what do you mean? I'm like, well, just think about this way. Imagine we are there's a job opening is on the second floor of a building, okay? And I am a disabled person. I'm on a wheelchair, let's just say, and then there's no elevator, okay? Both of us can be very qualified. That makes it equal, right? But the equity part is offering an elevator, so both of us have the opportunity to be able to get up to and apply for the job. And so there are many considerations of when it comes to diversity, equity, and inclusion, and creating an environment where people feel valued and respected. And my biggest caution with anybody doing the diversity, equity, inclusion programs is know the rules, know the laws, and know exactly the actions and steps that you're taking to implement the program. That's my biggest takeaway that I have learned, is that to know exactly what you're doing versus what I'm seeing, which is it hurts the organizations, is when you put people in positions of the DEI program, because somehow if I'm Hispanic and I'm Latina, I'm going to know how to run a DEI program. Okay. So if you are an African American or you're the minority, that makes you even more qualified. No, that doesn't. You know what I mean? So to me, there's tokenism there. So I think it's just it's not a one size fits all approach. But my biggest takeaway is really, like, anybody who runs the program, make sure they're being set up for success.
Yes, thank you for that. Thank you. I want to mention that example, especially too, that because it makes it so real world. It takes, I mean, it might be, I don't know if sad is the word, but brilliant. It's brilliant to take race out of it when you're trying to give an example that people can understand. Obviously, race is in all these different ethnicities and backgrounds and countries we're from. There's so many different factors, abilities, and those kinds of things. But the one that you used of the second floor, and this makes it equal. This is about equity. It's such a great
And that's
choice.
and that's why I bring it. That's why I try to bring it home, because people get
Yes.
stuck on that race aspect. Well,
And they totally miss your
you're
point.
exactly you're being given that position because you are Hispanic, or because you are Black, or because no. Let's just look at equity and equality, and they're not the same.
Mm-hmm. Yes. And what you said about the positions too, I actually again have these are actually close friends, but especially in 2020, it was like these women I knew who were VPs of marketing, and all of a sudden they were being asked to be the lead up the diversity, equity, and inclusion program in the company. Like, that is not my experience, my desire, because you're also putting on these individuals to carry the emotional labor of the organization, whereas they didn't sign up, because that's not diversity, equity, inclusion, belonging. Those positions, they usually have to fight for budgets, and there's all kinds of things. You have to be essentially an advocate and trained. As you said, you went through a process for it. This certainly isn't a token job, even though people might think of it that way. So you certainly would want someone in that position with experience, not because they quote unquote fit what you think that position should be about or what that person should look like who's doing that. So thank you for mentioning that. One of the things that has come up during our conversation, at least for me, from you, is this idea of resilience. So even in the way you explain things and how you're doing things in your organization, or doing it differently than other companies might be doing it, your own personal experience and those kinds of things. So can you talk to us a little bit about the importance of resilience as a woman, as a Latina, as an entrepreneur, all the ways that it's come up for you just in your life overall?
Mm, I love that question. I love that question. When I think about resilience, is sometimes we don't have a choice. When I talk about my book, Reclaim Your Worth, and I talk about my experience of being sexually abused in the U.S. Navy and the military, living, fighting the battle of anxiety, depression, suicide ideation for 30 years, and overcoming that. Often people will say, well, you're so resilient. But for me, I think about is survival. Like I didn't really have a choice, right? It's like being in the corporate world and going through the trials and tribulations as a minority. Is I really didn't have a choice. I had to survive. And so but what I really have done is taking ownership of my journey. Somebody recently said to me, because I'm a military sexual trauma survivor, is when you're carrying a burden, but you can't expect people to carry that for you. They might help you take that burden off, but you can't expect people to do that for you. And so for me, when I talk about my resilience, has been stop outsourcing my worth to people around me. Stop expecting people to fix the things that I'm going through, but me taking ownership of that. So when I think about being resilient, my big lesson has been is reclaiming my worth. Stop expecting people to fix things for me, and to stop expecting people to make me happy. Because at the end of the day, it's on me to navigate that resilience journey, and I get to define it, not anybody else.
Yes. And I want to say, first of all, I'm so sorry for what happened to you during your time in the military where you experienced, as you said, your sexual assault, which you talk about in your book, Reclaim Your Worth. So I'm sorry that happened.
Thank you.
You're welcome. I do want to ask you, one, thank you for sharing your experience in that way. It's a very, vulnerable place to put yourself in, to quote unquote volunteer or feel called to, I will say, put yourself in that position. And I know you've done other work around that too, to make sure survivors get to share their stories, be heard, and are working towards different laws and things there. But I'm curious for you, why was it personally important for you to share that story and your experience?
Because I was very ashamed for the longest time. For 30 years, I was ashamed to talk about it. I felt that it was my fault. I felt that I had caused every single incident in the military, which happened over 20 times. And so overcoming that mindset that I had not done anything wrong, but also going back to stop outsourcing my worth to people around me and taking ownership of my journey. When I was able to take ownership of my journey, that's when my recovery started, because it was the mindset. One is that recognizing that I needed to get help. I was no longer ashamed that, hey, you know what? Like my calendar, for example, is an open calendar to my employees. They know when I'm going to my psychiatrist. They see my psychologist. They also see the trials and tribulations that I've been through with my health, right? If I have to go to my doctor, everything, I have becoming open book. So when people see the facade, because I do call it was my facade, what people saw. Oh man, she has it all together. She's just so perfect. She has a perfect job. She's making six figures. She looks like this and she looks like that, and she's always put together. It was all a facade. So when I decided to take that off and then be able to look in the mirror and praise and stop judging and me myself where I'm at, that's when everything changed. And when I decided to tell my story, and I was so afraid to tell my story. The book is very raw. But when I decided to tell my story and say, I don't care what people think. I don't care, because I want to use my story. I want to use my imperfections to change lives. So that moment is when I decided that I'm starting to heal and I'm starting to feel better. After I wrote that book, it became a bestseller on Amazon. But it was so amazing just to see men and women send me messages and say, Jean, thank you so much for telling your story. Don't ever be ashamed. Don't ever be ashamed of telling your story. It's okay. So I know it's a long-winded answer, but that's kind of
No.
how why I decided to like tell my stories because I was done of suffering. I was done with this big facade that I had. And then I wanted to help people. I wanted to help them see that nobody asks to be sexually assaulted. Nobody asks for that to happen to them. And when it happens to you, it's not your fault.
Hmm. No, not long-winded at all. It's perfect. It's your story, it's your answer, and I wanted to hear about your experience. And I think there's always something going on in the news or current world we live in with discussions around these kinds of things, unfortunately. So I am happy to hear you too share that I'm not happy that this happened, certainly, but that you're sharing, hey, this was going on for decades and it wasn't even resilient. It was surviving, right? And trying to push through, I'd imagine, and trying to keep all of these things going and the facade that I imagine you must have had to have during that time. Because one of the first things people always say when someone is assaulted or there's domestic abuse or anything else, why didn't you leave? Why didn't you make a change? Why didn't there so? And you just can never imagine. I'm saying this per, you didn't say this. I believe as a person, if you're not in that situation with those even exact circumstances, you don't know what's going on. Everyone is different. I'm always happy when the person like yourself did decide to make the change, whatever that looks like, whether they share it publicly or not. So I'm just asking for anyone listening to have grace for any individuals we come across, certainly in our own lives, but even in the public, who are sharing their stories about their own experience with any kind of sexual abuse, assault, any kind of abuse, assault, etc. So thank you for being candid about this. Hey, this was going on for 30 years in your case.
Exactly. I
Okay.
completely agree. And it's being able to tell the story, being okay with it, not being ashamed. And everybody has a different experience.
Everybody, yes, exactly. One of the things that you mentioned, speaking of not being ashamed, and what I got from it being courageously vulnerable, is you mentioned your employees having access to your calendar and knowing when you have your therapy appointments, doctor's appointments and those things. Why was that important for you at this stage in your business? Because you're saying this is currently, right?
Hmm.
Stage of your business and for everyone to note, I know you recently received the Enterprising Women of the Year award in the 5 million to 10 million revenue category. So you have this successful business. You certainly can, keep on the facade or have this facade of what quote unquote success looks like, as opposed to, hey, I'm showing you these are the things that I have going on. This is how I'm not just surviving. These are the things that help me thrive as a
Hmm.
business woman, et cetera.
It makes me human.
Makes you human.
I try to humanize everything. There has been times with my recovery, my mental health recovery, that I have had to walk away for an afternoon, or I may have had to walk away for a day or a week. I took a sabbatical from the business pretty much for a year to help work with my mental health. And I'm very vocal to my team. I'm very vocal in social media because I want to create awareness. And I want people to know that they're not alone and that it's okay to tell the story and it's not okay to stay silent. And that telling your story doesn't make you a person of, oh my gosh, there she goes. She's just putting out her laundry, dirty laundry out there for people to know. But also it has helped me realize how important it is to have cheerleaders and protectors in my life. Again, be able to count on those protectors who are always there for me. And the cheerleaders are always going to be on the sidelines telling me, yes, you can do it.
Mhm. What was it like for you to create, if you had to create, you may have already had this in place, but just you mentioning being able to step away from your business or needing to step away from your business for a year, did you mention?
Mhm.
Your sabbatical. What kind of support did you have to have in your life and your business to be able to do something like that?
I'm very blessed. I have a great team. I had a great leadership team that allowed me the opportunity I was always engaged with the business, but I stepped back with many of the daily tasks, daily operations, because I needed to work on my mental health. Being able to navigate anxiety, for me is it was very difficult to work with men. I was assaulted many times while I served, and it was overcoming that. that realizing that everybody's not the same. That takes time. Being able to put in to practice the tools that were being given to me by my therapist, my psychiatrist. And and the other thing too is there's this stigma of well, if you admit there's something wrong with you and then you take medicine, then you're just so broken and you're just not normal. That was hard. It was like it was a puzzle because there's never one thing, right? It's always a combination of different things. So for me, as I recovered, it was not just one thing. It was like a puzzle, right? I needed my cheerleaders. I needed my protectors. I needed my doctors. I needed my medicine. I needed to take care of my body. I started doing yoga. I started doing Pilates, walking my dogs every day. So all this stuff, it was all these pieces to the puzzle to be able to say in December of 2022, I'm ready to reclaim my worth and putting all that stuff in practice. And that doesn't happen overnight. And in order to be able to put all those pieces together, you need a support system. And that's kind of what I did is surround myself with that support system that was going to help me get better.
What would you say it was for you during that time that helped you realize, you know what, I need to get help for these things, or to recognize, as you said, the pattern, say, for example, where it's difficult for me to work with men, something's going on here. And I ask these questions just so anyone who might be in different circumstance, certainly, but sometimes something's not right or something doesn't feel right, or I go through this with relationships, Gene. I'm like, why do I in this thing? Something's going, you just have to figure out what's going on no matter what it is. But sometimes it takes however long it takes for us to get to that point where we need to make a change. What was it for you to say this, 2022 December was the time that okay, I need to shift here to get to the next level?
Sometimes you have to hit rock bottom. And I say this for mental health. I say this for addictions. It's tough sometimes until you don't have that wake up call. Either for me, it was the time deciding if I wanted to live or die. That for me was the day. That was the moment. That was a defining moment in December 2022 is deciding I want to live and I want to get better. I can't be, a prisoner on my own body and mind. So that was the moment I decided. And the moment I decided because I was going to a psychiatrist, I was going to the counselors, they're giving you all these tools, they're telling you, but then I'm not doing my homework. It's like, okay, great. And then I'm blaming my therapist. I'm really blaming my psychiatrist because nothing is changing and I don't feel better. So the moment that I hit rock bottom, and that's when that mindset changed. That was the mindset. It's like, you know what? I'm no longer ashamed. I'm okay with having a psychiatrist. I'm okay with having a therapist. I'm okay to start taking care of my body. I'm okay with. And so that was the beginning for me to start doing all that and becoming really intentional because mental health is not a once in a lifetime or, oh, hey, I'm done with this. I'm so better and I'm good. It's a daily. It's a daily challenge. It's a daily thing that you have to face. But then what I have done is change the mindset of I recognize my emotions. I recognize what I'm feeling. One of the big things that my therapist and my psychologist has taught me is that stop struggling your emotions. Oh yeah, you know what? Like for example, in the Latino culture, they'll be like, "Why are you crying? You have a great life. Stop it. You don't have enough to do." Now it's like if I don't feel good, I explore those emotions and I'm like, why am I feeling this way? What's causing me? What's triggering all that stuff? So it has been a combination of many different things.
One of the things that my coach tells me, and I give her credit, but I tell everyone that I talk to this all the time, is similar to what you said. She says, first feel, second solve. And I think, as you mentioned, Latino culture and certainly African American culture and many, it's just breeze past whatever the problem is. How can I fix this? And especially if you're a woman who's ambitious like yourself and, you make things happen. People come to you for the solutions. I have friends who are moms. Everybody comes to them for the solutions. There's a lot of reasons we breeze past the feelings of the problem and try to get to the solution. So it's this intentional, as you mentioned, pausing and saying, where did this come from? Why do I first of all, I'm feeling this way. Let me name the feeling. Where did this come from? What might have happened? I now go through a whole process. Like, let me pause and figure this out. Because it might be something like, oh, I know now not to do whatever this thing is. Or I know now I don't need to be around this person, or whatever that looks like. But if you're just breezing to the solution without focusing on the first feel part, allowing yourself the space to do that, you're likely, at least in my experience and from what I've told other people, you're likely to repeat it again and again, or not really get what you need. Or as you mentioned, just sort of going through the motions. Oh, I go to therapy, but aren't you doing your homework? Are you not? Are you, putting your tools to work? So for everyone to catch this idea, first feel, second solve.
Yes, 100%.
So what are the ways, would you say, to wrap us up, that you are reclaiming your work intentionally day to day? Knowing all you know now, all your experiences, all your awards, and all the wonderful things you're doing in your business and the way you're taking care of yourself personally, what's something either you're doing or that you want to do from this day moving forward, Jean, every day to reclaim your worth?
It's a work in progress every day. I have to sometimes take myself back to why I wrote that book. And one is being intentional about your recovery, the tools that you have available to you. One is me understanding that I can't do it alone. Two is meeting myself where I'm at every single day, not where people want me to be. And I always go back to, when I look in the mirror, do I praise or do I judge? Because you can look in the mirror and you can be all dolled up with makeup and everything, but it's all about what do you see? That has been really important for me, is be able to look at myself and say, man, you're beautiful. I don't care if I don't have one drop of makeup. It's like, I'm beautiful. Mm-hmm. Or if I don't feel okay, it's okay to do that. And like I said, it's just being able to, I think the biggest help for me has been recognizing my emotions. Like you say, name that emotion, name that feeling. What am I feeling? Where am I feeling anxiety? Where's that coming from? What am I going to do? Sit on that feeling for a minute. What are you going to do about it? That has been the biggest lifesaver for me, is being able to understand my emotions and knowing that none of the stuff is my fault. I didn't do anything wrong, but I can't let the past define my future, that I have to press on.
That's right. And I love what you said about you don't have to do it all alone. That's what we're all about here at Support is Sexy. I always say having it all doesn't mean doing it all alone, right? So it's about getting the support, which you have shared with us here. Jean, thank you so much for your openness and candor, for sharing your story in your book. Everyone, again, the book is called Reclaim Your Worth. Make sure you go find out more about that. And tell us, Jean, where we can find out more about you. People can either get in touch or go to a website, wherever you want to send us, so we can find out more. And I'll make sure we have links to everything.
So one thing that I want to say is, because being perfect is too boring. I always say that to people.
Being perfect is too boring. Yes. All you perfectionists pick up on that.
Oh yeah. I just, I don't want to be perfect. It's just too boring.
Right.
People can go to Amazon and buy my book. And I also have a Spanish version.
Oh.
Recupera tu valor. Nice. And I have a children's book also that I released, all on the same lines of reclaiming your worth. Or you can go to my website, which is reclaimyourworthnow.com.
Reclaimyourworthnow.com.
Yes.
I will make sure. And all of the books are there?
Yes.
Okay, excellent. Yes. I'll just, so everyone can go on Amazon and find it. We'll do a link to Reclaim Your Worth Now as well, so you can find out more. Jean, thank you so much. I appreciate your time today. I'm so glad we connected. I am rooting for you always. So I think it's going to touch a lot of people. So I'm so happy that you shared with us today.
Thank you. Thank you so much for your time today. And I hoping that I can meet you in person in the future. Maybe I can take a trip to Mexico one of these days.
I was going to say, come to Mexico, or we can go to Colombia. I've never been.
Oh my gosh. Yes.
Never been. I was talking to
a person
literally yesterday.
Excellent.
Beautiful. Thank you. Hold on.
Thank you.
Of course. My pleasure.
Okay. Take care.